Please subscribe. The evening sun was sliding low over the wide Montana plains, painting the fields in strokes of gold and rust. A slow wind carried the scent of dust, hay, and something lonely, the kind of loneliness only a cowboy knew. Ethan Cole sat outside his small ranch cabin, his weathered hat tipped low, his calloused hands trembling as he tried to thread a needle. The old shirt in his lap had a torn sleeve, a simple thing, but his fingers shook too much to mend it. His once strong hands, the same hands that tamed wild horses and rebuilt fences after storms, were now betraying him. Maybe it was the long nights, or maybe it was the memories that never left him alone. He took a deep breath, his jaw tightening as he squinted against the fading light. For most folks, mending a shirt was nothing. But for Ethan, it was proof he could still fix something, when he couldn't fix what was truly broken inside him. He had been alone for months now, since the accident that took his brother, Luke. They had built this ranch together from dust and sweat, two orphans who made a home out of the wilderness. But when that horse threw Luke and dragged him through the canyon, Ethan had been too far to help. That night still haunted him, the sound of thunder, the flash of lightning, and the cry that echoed off the canyon walls. Since then, silence had become his only friend. He worked through days and sat through nights, mending fences, fixing saddles, and keeping busy enough to forget. But today, even that small piece had left him. His hands wouldn't stop trembling, no matter how hard he tried. He whispered under his breath, "Come on, Ethan, it's just a stitch, you can do this." That's when he heard the soft crunch of boots behind him. He looked up sharply, expecting maybe a ranch hand or a stray horse. But instead, a woman stood there, the kind of sight that didn't belong to this lonely place. She was holding a basket of wildflowers, her hair loose and golden brown in the evening wind. Her eyes were warm, yet curious, like she was seeing not just the man, but the sorrow behind his silence. Ethan froze, unsure whether to speak or stay quiet. The woman smiled gently and said, "You're gonna poke yourself if you keep holding the needle like that." Her voice was soft, like a melody the prairie wind carried. Ethan blinked, lowering his gaze. "Didn't think anyone was out this way," he muttered, his tone rough but not unkind. "Didn't think I needed company." She stepped closer, her steps light on the dry grass. Sometimes the ones who think they don't, need it the most. She kneeled beside him without waiting for permission, her hands steady and graceful. Ethan's breath caught as she reached for the needle, her fingers brushing against his rough ones. "Let me," she said simply. For a second, he wanted to pull back, his pride as a cowboy whispered that he didn't need help. But when he saw the gentleness in her eyes, he let go. Her hands moved with ease, stitching the torn fabric with quiet focus. He watched her work, mesmerized not by what she was doing, but by how she made the silence feel soft again. After a moment, he found his voice. "You so often." She smiled faintly. "Mama taught me when I was little. She said every stitch is like a prayer, keep something from falling apart." Ethan looked down at the shirt, the thread glinting faintly in the sunlight. "Then I guess I need a few prayers more than I thought." Her name was Clara, and she'd come from the neighboring town, visiting her uncle's farm a few miles east. She told him she'd lost her mother the winter before, and when she saw his ranch on the horizon, something told her to stop by. Maybe it was fate, maybe something else. But Ethan couldn't shake the strange peace that her presence brought. They talked, not much, but enough for the quiet to feel alive again. She told him about her love for simple things, reading under a tree, baking bread, tending to her garden. He listened, his eyes resting on her face as if memorizing every word. For the first time in months, he smiled. A small, tired smile, but real. When she handed back the mended shirt, he held it gently like it was something sacred. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For fixing more than just the cloth." Clara met his gaze, her eyes glimmering in the fading light. "Sometimes, fixing small things reminds us that big things can heal too." Days passed, and Clara began visiting often. Sometimes she brought food, sometimes flowers, sometimes nothing but her company. Ethan found himself waiting for her, the way parched land waits for rain. He'd start to notice things again, the song of the meadowlark, the way sunlight touched the hills, the smell of coffee in the morning. It was as if life was returning to his bones, one quiet moment at a time. Clara would sit on the porch while he worked, her laughter soft and light as she teased him about his stubbornness. "You cowboys act tough," she'd say, "but you can't even mend a sleeve without turning it into a battle." He'd chuckle, shaking his head. "We're fighters, not stitchers." "Well," she'd reply with a smile, "maybe it's time you learned both." One evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, Ethan looked at her and said, "You ever think some folks are sent into our lives for a reason?" Clara nodded slowly. "I think some souls recognize each other, even before they've met." The word settled deep in him. He'd never been one for poetry, but something about her made his heart listen differently. And though he didn't say it out loud, he knew she had touched something inside him that had long been dead. Yet behind that warmth, a quiet fear stirred. Because love, or even hope, was something he'd stopped believing he deserved. That night, after she left, Ethan sat on the porch again, staring at the mended shirt. His hands no longer trembled. He ran his thumb over the thread, thinking of her words. "Every stitch is like a prayer." Maybe, just maybe, his life was being stitched back together too, thread by thread, smile by smile. But deep down, he also knew that life had a cruel way of testing anything fragile, and that this peace might not last forever. Still, as the moon rose high and the wind whispered through the grass, Ethan whispered a promise into the night, "Tomorrow, I'll tell her." Tell her what, he wasn't sure yet. Maybe that he was grateful. Maybe that she'd made him believe again. Or maybe, that he was starting to fall in love. And as he leaned back, the stars above seemed brighter than they'd been in a long, long time. Somewhere, in the distance, the sound of a lone horse echoed, a reminder that life keeps moving, no matter the pain. But for the first time since his brother's death, Ethan didn't feel left behind. He felt part of the world again, alive, hopeful, trembling for a reason that wasn't sorrow. The needle she had taken from his shaking hands had done more than fix a shirt, it had mended something inside his soul.